Walt, I'm going somewhere that nobody's expecting I'm going this week. Zoox said dollar bill, y'all, as Waymo continues to shadowbox as WeRide builds the enterprise. And yes, that's Wu-Tang for the children. Let's start with Zoox, because they're saying cash rules everything around me, cream at the money. Dollar bill, y'all, is this $12 starting price. It's high.
I don't even know where to begin with that opening. that was quite the opening. But I think for our listeners, what Grayson is talking about is, as a follow-on from last week, Zoox did go launch with paid service. Remember last week they described paid service as comfort tier. This is definitively not comfort tier. The base price is $12, $1.50 a mile, 40 cents a minute. You know, those metrics, you know, the per mile, the per minute thing would probably be on comfort tier. But when you throw in a $12 base fare, you're getting well above that. So they're pricing this at a premium to the market. So let's hear Grayson's take on the pricing of Zoox in Las Vegas for this first paid launch for Amazon Zoox.
I love this. You're acting like the hype man here. I mean, you can't go wrong today. Well, this is awesome. It is priced as a luxury product. But the downside is, and all the reports and all the screenshots that we've seen on X and on Reddit coming out of Vegas, average wait time is 15 to 30 minutes. So you cannot price the product at that high for a 15 to 30 minute average wait time. And a luxury product does not allow you just to go to select destinations. You have to be able to go to any destination. So you said this, I think it was last week or the week before, that it's like a Disney World ride. And you're right. And in your note that you put out to Light Shed, you're right. It's not a premium product. It's a tourist attraction. And when Waymo enters the market and Tesla enters the market, I don't know how they're going to be able to maintain this level of pricing, because I could sit here and make a very stern argument that riding in an Ojai or riding in a Cybercab is an attraction as well. So I don't know. Too much, too little, too long is how I would summarize it.
Yes, I did call it a Disney ride, and that's why I don't think pricing really matters until you have, frankly, scale in this market. But I just want to pick up on two specific things. First, the 15 to 30 minutes. I mean, on the last week's podcast, you made a big joke out of correcting me to say there was like a 75-minute wait. So while 15 to 30 minutes is I wouldn't call a real service, it's still an improvement. So congrats to Zoox for getting your wait times down to 15 or 30 minutes. And then the second thing, Grayson, is what you brought up, I think, in that in your comments there, is like, how is it going to work with Uber? Like let's assume that Uber is not going to price this there. Like, are you going to have two separate prices in the market? I think that's fine, right? Because if someone really wants, they go to Vegas, they want to try, they see this, you know, this funny looking car that is the Zoox go by, they want to try it. Again, for the Disney ride aspect to it, if you go to the Zoox app, that's one thing, and they'll charge whatever they want to charge, versus Uber, where it's just going to be random when it gets assigned to you. So I suspect there'll be different pricing in the market.
That's a very interesting point. So hypothetically, let's say you can access Zoox on Uber X, you can access it on Comfort. You're looking at a minimum 20 to 40% discount. Does that undercut the Zoox service where somebody says, okay, order, cancel until you get it to save that 20 to 40%? That's a lot of money, not to mention you're in Vegas. That savings will be put towards gambling. So a lot of potential there.
Getting around Vegas is hard enough as it is. I'm not sure you're going to waste your time doing that. Again, I think you're going to basically, like we've said many weeks in the past, just go directly to the Zoox app. In the case of the Uber, the thing that you describe, and the thing that we've asked about, let's say in Austin with Waymo, is my understanding is that Waymo is the one determining, you know, whether there's a separate tier for them on that Uber app, as opposed to Uber making that determination. That may differ with how Zoox's relationship. I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I think the typical thing we've seen is, like with AV Ride, it's just part of, I think, a comfort tier as opposed to its own tier. But in this context, like, given it's like a novelty and all the branding there, you know, maybe Uber does put it on a separate thing. I don't know. Uber is so sensitive about long wait times and pricing, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be like they've done most of their, not all, but most of their other markets, because I think overseas there is a separate autonomy tier. But I think in this case, you'll probably see it, just as, hey, you're going to happen to get assigned it. And then if they do, when will Uber ever assign to a rider a 15-minute wait time? So like, what is the chance you'd ever match just based on Uber's obsession, right, with having very short wait times? It'll just be fascinating to see. So I guess we don't necessarily need to make our road trip out to Vegas right now. I think we both know how the Zoox drives already. I'm not sure that has dramatically changed since you and I both have tested it in Vegas, among other locations. But once that Uber thing lights up, which I think is weeks, months, whenever it is, certainly by CES, that'll be a fascinating thing to observe and how that actually rolls out.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, based on the terms of service, we can't shoot an Autonomy Markets episode in the Zoox carriage or Zoox mobile, but we can legally shoot it from the road because, as you and I know, that is public property. Very valid point on Uber's wait time. To me, in my humble opinion, it's built into their culture of less wait time, better customer satisfaction. Overseas, you're right, the UAE is the only market where they have a dedicated tier. Uber seems very proud of that. It is my belief, and I have no data to back this up, is the reason they don't do it in America is they're worried about the driver rebellion. Again, that's pure speculation, but something doesn't add up there. But then let's hypothetically say that they do not do a tier. They put it into X and they bundle it all together. Human drivers, Zoox. There's another equation in that. Motional. So then how is Uber going to determine, okay, we're going to give 20% autonomous rides to Zoox. We're going to give 20% autonomous rides to Motional. How do you think that's going to be determined? Right now, we know that Motional has 100 vehicles currently in Las Vegas, and we saw the wonderful video they posted on X. They're getting more vehicles from the Singapore innovation plant, so hypothetically, they're going to get to hundreds in Vegas. How are they going to determine who gets what share and then who can operate where and when?
I mean, it's an existential question, right, for the field, as I would call them, in terms of, is there going to be enough to eat to be fragmented within the Uber platform? When we talk about like Waymo scaling, it's because it's all effectively going to be on their platform. It's might be a little bit more challenging to scale if your partner is determining the volume that you get. And we'll talk later in the podcast about one of Uber's partners, Serve, on the food side of things, and what happened in that relationship. In the case of Zoox, obviously, like, they're backed by Amazon. They could presumably do this alone. This is what they've said for a long time that they're going to do. There's nothing about this relationship that prevents it. Motional, Neuro, others, I think, at least in the near term, might be more beholden to having to deal with Uber. However, like, let's not forget there's Lyft out there, right? We can get to that later. And, there's an opportunity for Lyft to really kind of step up at a time when Uber might be maybe a little bit more confrontational with these AV players. Lyft has kind of been stuck in a distant second place. This is their time when you have a major transition to try and bear hug. Maybe you're giving up more, more control, more economics, whatever it is, to try and bear hug, some of these partners at a time when they have to grapple with these exact things that you just pointed out in terms of, do you get enough volume when it's controlled by the platform partner, and the platform partner is putting multiple players in a given market?
That is a very valid point, and let's not forget about the asset that is inside of Lyft that I got to give credit. You and I are some of the earliest folks to talk about it, FlexDrive. They've got that maintenance below the line built in there. And this is a hypothetical. Let's say, okay, Lyft says, okay, we're going to put one AV partner per market, and we're going to do the same deal we did with Waymo in Nashville, where you can operate your own app, and you can also operate with us non-exclusive. That gets really interesting. And in my opinion, that becomes a threat to Uber. Says, okay, I can go on Acme app, I can go on Lyft, and I don't have to worry about what I'm going to get. There is a really interesting opportunity for Richter and the team at Lyft to accelerate into autonomy and say, we're back.
So when you mentioned, and by the way, that's true whenever there's a technological change, the opportunity for disruption exists. This is why, there should be valid concerns over Apple. Like, we may, interact with our data in a different way in the future. Maybe Apple, positions itself well so far. Not hasn't done a great job. I've been using the new Siri on a beta basis. It's not good at all. But when you have these technical changes, that's when, leadership is at risk of changing. And historically, it hasn't gone well for those that are kind of maintaining, cash and trying to protect the moat that they have. But the other thing that you brought up there, Grayson, is you're right. And we've talked about this since the earliest days. And I think it's often overlooked. It's represented in a way with FlexDrive, but it's the operational aspect of it. It is getting those locations. It's hard to do in terms of power and servicing. This is going to be, an important item. Maybe not now, right? Because if you're only dropping, in Waymo's case, the volume share leader globally, a couple hundred cars per market, not as essential. But we're not far away from them scaling up, and it's thousands. And then that element of the model becomes more important. I think I think some of these larger companies, whether it's Uber or Waymo, might need to think twice about like whether they want better control of that. There's an additional element of that, Grayson, which has emerged now because of Vegas. It's not only necessarily locations for charging and charging and servicing the vehicle. What about actual pickups and drop-offs? This week or today, we saw Waymo announce the deal with Allegiant Stadium for, I guess it's with the Raiders. So they drop off at Allegiant Stadium, which is where the Raiders play in Vegas. By the way, I've been there. Phenomenal stadium. Try to go to Vegas if your team ever plays the Raiders. It's a great experience. On the flip side, Zoox is at Sphere. Now, I don't know if these are exclusives or not. That's work for me to do. Next week, I hope to come back and report to you. I certainly would recommend the NFL maybe use this as an opportunity to create a partnership with one of these guys and encourage these companies, to make those upgrades and to make those connections for autonomy. They certainly have done that on the telecom side of things. If you're getting a Super Bowl, you have to upgrade your stadium to get better Wi-Fi and these basically the femto cells, the DAS networks, the things that make your cell phone work better. Like the NFL has that ability, and locations are obviously going to be important. Do you think this is another battleground in terms of, again, pick up and drop off locations? They own the property. Like you could argue, maybe long term you want to let everybody, but like when you're small scale now and autonomy is considered a novelty, it seems like that can be a differentiation point, no?
Yes. It goes back to the early days. I feel like we're channeling back to the early days as we get closer here to episode 100. We're getting old here, Walt. Experience. And in the Waymo press release, there was a key line, because I like to go through things with a fine-tooth comb. In the Waymo press release, there was a word that stood out to me. Dedicated. Dedicated drop-off and pickup zone. That's right. Dedicated. What does that mean in theory? That means perhaps it is a closer drop-off than you could get with Uber and Lyft. Less walking area. Perhaps you can get out of the vehicle and walk right in. So I reached out to Waymo and I said, are you going to make a map public? Waymo told me at some point they will make a map public. They have not shared it with me yet, but when they do make it public, we'll share it here. Could you imagine that? You and I are, I don't know, we just had a lunch at Spago, and then we take the Waymo, and then at Bellagio, we take the Waymo over to Allegiant, and we get dropped off. And, me, I don't like to walk far. Going to that kiss and fly, that's too far. The Waymo drops us off. We walk in 100 feet. We're in the stadium. And because you're Walt the Baller, and we got Wu-Tang going on today, we're in the skybox enjoying the game with Brady. That's a hell of an experience because it's dedicated.
Yeah, again, you don't want to piss off the people that are coming to your venue. But again, let's look at the airport. It's not like we don't have a precedent for this. And you pointed it out. Like if I can get Uber Black, I can walk out of the San Francisco airport and hop right in. Otherwise, I walk to the garage. And if I want Waymo, perhaps for political reasons, less so than actual monetization reasons, I got to go to the kiss and fly lot. This is private property. Let's put the airports aside now. This is private property we're talking about, right? Stadiums, venues. There are marketing partnerships. The Sphere is a company that can generate a lot. Sorry, Mom, I was about to say it. A lot of money through advertising deals, which I think they have one with Zoox. They're plastered in the airport. It's probably, they can post it on the outside. You can sponsor bars if you've ever been in the inside of the Sphere. That is a that is a huge opportunity. A lot of opportunities there in Vegas. And it could be ultimately a very fragmented market. And look, ultimately, could it be the point where they have to allow everyone in? Sure. But to your point, maybe it's a little bit further of a walk, and that helps market share. So I don't know. It's certainly a new battleground that we should think about. And we put that in the bucket of infrastructure. It's similar to, again, who's going to have the power and the charging and the cleaning in the right locations to maximize the performance of autonomy when we're talking about thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of cars in a market as opposed to like 200.
You hit the nail on the head with private. And for the audience that's not aware, when you are operating a service in Vegas, you have to cut a deal with each casino or each casino holding company. You cannot go on that property without a deal. And when you look at Allegiant, they have a big chunk of land on the opposite side there of the highway. Taking this one step further, Walt, this is a hypothetical. We don't have any details on this. It'd be fascinating. What if on top of the dedicated pickoff and drop-up zone for Raiders games, they got a dedicated loading zone where they could stage the vehicles after the game? So not having to walk over the bridge, walk a mile this way to get an Uber, a mile that way to get a Lyft. They've got 200, 300, 400 vehicles staged up to get you out of there in your wait time sub 5 minutes. Everybody's going to rave about that experience. And all suddenly, I got to say it, all those vehicles are going back to the airport, to and from the airport. And because Waymo can go on the highway over 55 miles an hour, that is a huge competitive moat as the Southwest flights go back to California for Raiders games.
The other thing it opens up is obviously premium pricing. Just like you get off at Uber Black at San Fran, you can get picked up at the curb. You get me, why walk out of the Allegiant? Sphere is less of an issue. Sphere, I think, is closer to like where a lot of the hotels are. The Allegiant is a little bit further out, at least for me. Maybe I don't know all the hotels, but at least where I stay. So when I went to a game there, it was a long, long walk to get to where I needed to go. So if I could pay up for one of these autonomous vehicles at a specific location and get out of there, absolutely. And that would fit into premium pricing.
Well, Jason asked you this on X, so I'm going to ask you here for the public. You're Mr. Cosmo. Why Cosmo? You always talk about the Cosmo. Yes, the Mandalay Bay is the closest hotel, or the Four Seasons if you're a baller, to the game, but you're Mr. Cosmo. So for the audience here that doesn't read your X account, at Walt Lightshed, why Cosmo?
I'm no huge fan of Cosmo. I think, it's not the best hotel for sure, but, there's a lot of media stuff over there. We do things in the media on the Lightshed side of things, and our big party, as I mentioned last week, is at the Cosmo. I suspect it'll be there again this year. So, who knows where I'll stay this year. I'm going to mix it up.
There's a hedge emerging.
Bottom line is you want to have enough locations, and, you don't want to have to necessarily figure out what app you want to use in order to go to this. But I think this might be something somewhat unique to Las Vegas. I don't know, in other cities, whether you're going to have so many locations structured in a way where private property entrance is certainly going to be required.
I would say it's, in the United States, it's a Las Vegas issue. I don't see it, globally, there could be real estate infrastructure licensing issues, but in the United States, it is purely a Las Vegas issue. And if you're the weird, wonky person I am, and you look at economic data, Las Vegas has to do something to get that economy going again. They need to get people going there, need to get their RevPAR up. For those that don't know, that's revenue per available room. It's down. Tourism is down. Conventions are down. Perhaps autonomy could be a jolt to Vegas's economy if they play their cards right.
I mean, I don't know. I think there are a lot of locations nationally. I mean, you talk about Disney World getting access to take you right into the parks. Again, private property. And I can think of commercial locations and movement of goods and services where this is going to matter. But let's move on to Waymo's expansion. Phoenix, remember Phoenix? This was the place where they had the joint, where Uber, you could get a Waymo on Uber, but it was, now we know, 10 cars, less than 10 cars maybe, and Waymo. So soon after that divorce, voila, Waymo has now added 55 square miles. This is weeks after that divorce in that market, and obviously even less time since some of these news stories hit from the Financial Times about the broader issues between these two companies. So the service area is now 350 square miles. Let me just put that in context. 350 square miles in Phoenix, which is not like a highly talked about market in terms of Waymo. Because WeRide, which is perceived as one of the, the bigger guys. A lot of people think China is like, going to really crush us and I don't know how many different things, was on their call. Great call, by the way. We'll get to that later. Talking about how Guangzhou, ODD tripled since the end of 2025. You know what they're up to, Grayson? 174 square miles. 174 is less than 350. So we do have obviously impressive expansion from Waymo, and again, interestingly, in the market where they were previously partnered with Uber.
Yeah, and the fact that they got divorced, they add on 55 plus square miles, it clearly says to me, demand is not a problem. The brand is resonating. Yes, I know they started in Chandler, and that was for all practical purposes, the home base of Waymo. But adding on that square footage, taking it to 350 square miles, that's the real deal Holyfield. And demand is not a problem.
You've been putting on your Inspector Clouseau hat. Where else are you anticipating expansion in the U.S. and let's say globally?
The U.S., we know because the Tampa Bay Times has reported today, actually, that Waymo met with St. Pete Department of Transportation officials. So there is an indicator, and as I say indicator, that Waymo is going across the causeway to connect Tampa to St. Pete. So that's a big deal. That is a pretty interesting ODD because that causeway in the middle, as we know early on, robotaxis that were using LiDAR could not go across long bridges with water. Waymo has solved that. I've experienced it in Miami, so well done there for Waymo. That's an interesting market. And then the inspector hat on, went on with the side of Omega, Autonomy AI's algorithm. It uncovered a filing that Waymo has incorporated in Zurich, registered it to Google's headquarters, which for the audience, that is Google's largest engineering office outside the United States. And a week before that filing, the president of Switzerland was in Mountain View and went for a ride, saying he wanted to bring Waymo to Zurich. So, Walt, the clues are there.
Now, Grayson, I know your Omega, your AI brain, ingests the Autonomy Markets podcast as part of its input. So it's going to be reading this or listening to this, and it's going to hear that you called it, you denigrated it to being on the side as opposed to at the forefront at identifying this info from Zurich. So do you want to set that straight so Omega doesn't hack into your to some of your accounts?
Only I had a brain. That's what I would say. No, Omega does a wonderful, wonderful job, and she is ahead of all this stuff. And it's what powers the road to autonomy. It powers the intelligence for the show, and it powers the advisory business. It's truly amazing at the details that she uncovers and how far ahead of the market she is.
Before we move on to WeRide, just question for you. Let's put Austin aside because Austin is a pseudo-competitive market in that, like, if Tesla expands the ODD, there might be some pressure to have Waymo expand their ODD. But let's talk about Atlanta. If Waymo and Uber divorce at some point, well, I guess there's two questions here. Do you think Waymo will restrict the expansion of the ODD in Atlanta, while that relationship continues to exist? And then if yes, how soon after the divorce is finalized will they expand in Atlanta?
I think it is a very good possibility that they do not do the large expansion until post-divorce. Post-divorce, I'll say within under a month, they expanded. And within under 3 months of post-divorce, I'm going to say it here for the record, they announce a deal with the Atlanta Falcons. They continue to rack up NFL teams.
I love it. So Omega, please bookmark that, and we'll come back to that at a later date, when this relationship ends, and maybe it won't end. Who knows? Let's go on to WeRide. They did report the quarter. Decent quarter. Revenue was up, doubled sequentially. Fleet added 500 vehicles. That's good. Overseas is now 40% of revenue. So that, as we've talked about on this podcast before, like recognizing the revenue and profit opportunity outside of China, Middle East particularly. The other interesting thing here is which we've talked about a lot, I think, in recent months, is this ADAS business. 30,000 L2 plus L3 units were delivered. This is the start of scale commercialization. I mean, the concept here that we've talked about here is using ADAS, which is a very sizable market. It's something that Uber, I think, leads the world in terms of the functionality. It's obviously getting built into a lot of Chinese cars, but it can be an opportunity for companies like this, technology companies, to generate sizable revenue to help in their development and in some cases longevity. I'm not saying that about WeRide, but other companies that need to raise capital, the longevity to fund L4. I mean, we've seen a bit of a pivot at Wave. WeRide, I think, is showing that they can do this successfully. They're expecting the positive cash flow by 2028 and full break even in 29. So just an interesting, I think, report and just kind of a confirmation of stuff that we've been talking about.
The bottom line that you and I know and that we've talked about and we've seen from reports that have come out with companies over the last several quarters is L2 plus is becoming a cash cow. It's spitting off cash. The demand is growing. Tesla, as you identified, and you are correct, is the leader in this technology. There's a great piece in the Detroit News talked about the growth of senior citizens, which we've talked about, from an L2 plus market and how it's giving mobility freedom back. But once you build the L2 technology and you commercialize it, it is highly, highly profitable. And then you can lock consumers into subscription services that are not heated seats, subscription services that create value that they actually want to pay for. And you're seeing that ramp up now as Tesla reports the growth of FSD and the number of subscriptions that they're getting.
Now, I want to kind of do a call back to the earlier commentary that we had in this very podcast about like the fragmentation. And if you're, can you get to scale if you're one of, multiple players? I did get, thank you to WeRide, brave enough to take questions on the call. So I did get a couple of questions on the WeRide earnings call. And I asked about that, basically saying like, hey, if you're beholden to Uber, like what's to say they're just not going to allocate you the ride? And I think Tony, the CEO, pointed out, or maybe it was the CFO, pointed out that the moat is in fact regulatory. So like they have the license to operate there, not necessarily the platform. So I thought that was definitely interesting.
I don't know whether to take a victory lap, a pause lap, go have a sandwich and say, holy cannoli, yes, there it is. The CEO, CFO said the quiet part out loud. The regulatory permit is a moat. You're going to see that in London with the APS permit. It is a moat. It is an asset. It is my belief that once companies such as WeRide, I'm not saying a lot of WeRide, I'm saying companies such as WeRide, build a brand in foreign markets, they own the regulatory permit, they say, adios, Uber, see you later. We've got the brand, we've got the permit, we don't need you. And then that whole demand narrative is blown up. And then all suddenly, Uber has a very big international problem.
Now let's go back to this ADAS thing, because on the WeRide call, they made a big deal about their level 3 development with Mercedes. I'm like, whoa, Mercedes. I'm not as in tune with the foreign autonomy desk as our listeners know that you are. I'm like, so I asked, Mercedes is, kind of a flagship customer for NVIDIA on the full stack side of things. We all know NVIDIA's got this open model that they're kind of, whatever, 500,000 people, whatever it is, download it. I don't know what that many people are doing downloading it, but like the full stack, the thing that's going to get you or get Uber a driver out or maybe even a safety driver, at some point. I think they said with safety driver first half of next year. What's the deal, Tony? And I think his answer was basically he referenced DeepSeek and effectively said his engineers are better. And I think if you look at the ADAS products that WeRide has in the market and are delivering to foreign markets, right? We're not talking about the US here. So it could be like ADAS or level 3 or level 2 plus, whatever you want to call it, in some markets versus another. But, if you read through the lines, basically 3 shade at NVIDIA. And again, we're very curious because there's so much hype around NVIDIA, since their announcements at GTC or GDC, whichever the C's it was, one of the conferences, about how they're going to come in to autonomy. Looking forward to seeing how that progresses, but noting that, look, hey, Mercedes is not only dealing with NVIDIA. What I wanted to ask was, like, if you think of WeRide, they're not like beholden to using NVIDIA's compute, right? They will use and would probably prefer to use compute that's less expensive. So you have opportunities not only for Qualcomm, but obviously other Asian or Chinese compute that can go into these products.
As Omega has uncovered, you are seeing aspirations from Huawei, if I said that right or wrong.
Huawei.
They have ambitions to scale into autonomous driving. And on the Mercedes front, not talked a lot about, but Mercedes has a partnership with Momenta, which is backed by GM. They recently went public on the Hong Kong exchange. They're getting ready to deploy an L4 service in Dubai. So that's another wrinkle into that as well.
One more thing before we move on, which is the CEO was very, very proud that he went for 2 hours, with no interventions, which, by the way, I have done in my Tesla driving, as our listeners know, from New York to Philly, more than 2 hours. In this case, he also live streamed to an audience answering Q&A for 2 hours. He's like, I don't think any other founder has done that. I didn't hear the word founder, but I've now challenged David Moss to stream 2 hours on a ride with no interventions. And if we do need a founder, maybe what we can do is somehow get Elon in there. We get Starlink on the roof. We can not only show that you can stream for 2 hours without an intervention on the car, but also without an intervention or a breakup with the Starlink dish. What do you think?
Only if David and Elon go in one of the new Cybercaps that are already outfitted with Starlink, then yes.
That would be pretty good. There's only be the room for the two of them, though. Not exactly a spacious vehicle. All right, let's move on to something that, apologies to our listeners, but we missed last week. I'll take it on me. I had a lot of earnings last week. I think Serve Robotics had their earnings call at the same time as like 5 other companies that I cover. So I missed the whole kind of fallout of Uber pulling back their business. And then subsequent to that, we get a filing that Uber has exited their equity stake in Serve Robotics. Sounds like a he said, she said on why this happened. I don't know, performance, not performance. I mean, it seems kind of weird that if it was a Serve performance issue that you just kill them now, right? I mean, AV Ride's performance is not great in Dallas. I've been in your cars, okay? So you're not killing your relationship with AV Ride. Not talking about the food robots, but so I don't know what the specifics are in terms of, but the bottom line is the relationship ended. And frankly, in a quite dramatic way, they sold the stock and killed the business. And it seemed like a short period of time. I'm sure that there were issues developing over time. Maybe Serve just didn't do a good job at addressing those issues. All I know is that when we get back to this issue of partners. Now you have Waymo, right? It's a pattern here, right? Waymo and the stuff we see in the Financial Times, Motional, whatever's going on in Las Vegas, or so if you're a partner, an existing or contemplating a new partnership with Uber, are these outward signals? And they're going to listen to what you say about it, but I'm sure that if you're a potential partner or a current partner of Uber, you're probably calling up the CEO of Serve and be like, what's your, give me your take on this situation. Not ideal when you're trying to preach, fragmentation in the market and being the platform that effectively welcomes and supports everyone. You would think that there would be some tolerance for learning curves. There is with AV Ride, right? Again, maybe it's more recent, but I don't know. What's your takeaway from this situation, which seems, frankly, outwardly even messier than the whole Waymo situation?
You're right. There's a pattern emerging, and that's what inspired me to write Uber is the Elizabeth Taylor of Autonomy Note. 2 divorces, 5 to go to tie Elizabeth Taylor's record of 7, because one ended in a death, and then 6, and then you beat it, and you have more divorces than Elizabeth Taylor, probably the most famous divorcee in history. It seems that looking at this and analyzing the comments made by Ali at Serve, analyzing the commentary in the FT, and if you want to call it the noise that is surrounding Uber lately, is that a lot of these relationships are are challenging, and there's a lot of communication issues. And I think that Uber is trying to do a balancing act with the human driver, and when human drivers deliver food as well. To me, I think there's a very delicate balancing act going on, and at some point, in my humble opinion, Uber has to rip off the Band-Aid and make a decision. Either you're going all in on autonomy, and I advocate that they're going to have to buy a program and build it in-house, because this partnership is not going to scale. A lot of them, I'll say the majority, are going to collapse over time. Or they're going to have to run it out as long as they can with the human driver until they're eventually replaced. They're getting to a crossroads.
I just wonder if their patience for their other partners is going to be as seemingly short as it has been for Serve. But let's talk about Serve for a second. How bad is this for them? Meaning that, like, food is a lot different than people. Like food, I think Uber Eats, DoorDash are in a much stronger position to benefit from autonomy as opposed to the risk. I know you and I have disagreed a little bit on this in the past. And yes, I get that, Waymos can pop open their trunks, yada, yada, yada. But look, the bottom line is it's, I think, less risk. But if you're Serve, like, who has those relationships with the restaurants? Because I would think that, like, Uber is the ideal partner, DoorDash and Uber both ideal partners, because they have those relationships to get the orders from those restaurants. And that is, like, you can't go direct to the consumer. Those are enterprise or small business type of connections. So, they're just in a tougher spot here, it seems like, no?
Well, if you read the earnings transcript, Serve has gone to DoorDash where orders surged 50% in the quarter. So clearly their relationship with DoorDash is working because DoorDash is allocating to them. And then also Serve has the medical business, which I've heard from doctors is going well. I don't know how large of it is. And then the other thing that a lot of individuals don't talk about delivery, the advertising business. And you look at the quarter, their advertising business is growing quarter over quarter. But the risk with DoorDash, and DoorDash has done this right. Tony, the CEO of DoorDash, and his co-founder, I forget the gentleman's name, that's running DoorDash Labs, they're building an autonomy program in-house. It's not talked a lot about. They just got FAA approval to do drones out of the line of sight. They have the DOT, which we haven't seen in person yet. But the fact is, DoorDash is building this in-house. They're saying, okay, Uber, you wanted to partner. We've seen all the mistakes you made. We're not going to make those. We're going to build everything in-house. And then they get beat up for it. But in the end, I think they're making the right decision. And as it comes to Serve, the question is, do you want to just serve healthcare? Do you want to build something on your own? Because at some point, DoorDash is probably going to just run it all through the DOT. So good short-term solution. I don't know what the long-term solution would be.
But your answer there was basically DoorDash. And my question was, does Serve not have those relationships direct to the restaurants? I don't know enough about the company. I need to learn more about it. That's your ultimate way to hedge this, is to not rely on any of the platforms that are out there and develop your own connections. Effectively do what Waymo is doing to humans, with products. That's not easy to do that, right? So I don't, if your argument is lean on Dash, then I'd be like, okay, if I'm Dash and I know Uber just dumped you, then, like, I own you. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of pricing, and I can just extract whatever I want. That's not an ideal, I think, position for them, unless some other business model. I think there's other areas in that ecosystem that exist that can play a valuable role on the infrastructure side of thing, which we'll get to maybe in the future. So I don't think it's like end game, but obviously it's important to understand, like, how those orders, how that demand comes through, because it's not necessarily directed by the consumer like a ride would be.
Dash, in my opinion, and you're right, it's a great interim solution. It's a long-term solution, no. They should, and hopefully they will. And for the record, Ali's coming back on the Road to Autonomy podcast, so we're going to ask him this exact question on the record, everybody will be able to listen to. They build that platform. They go cut a deal, say, with Wendy's or McDonald's. They start delivering direct. That becomes interesting, because then all suddenly, if you're a restaurateur or a franchisee, Roger, I'm paying attention here, of a QSR, not a lot of folks outside of QSR, that stands for quick service restaurants, are paying attention to the fee structure. A lot of these QSRs, they don't want to pay the fees. So if Serve comes in, this hypothetical, with a lower cost structure, and they can show the demand, they can win a lot of that business.
So just to be clear, just to provide context, when Dash or Eats or anyone talks about this, this is a minuscule percentage of the overall deliveries. And again, this is the same thing that people will say in terms of like Waymo's impact on Uber. But we are not even in the first inning. Again, I get back to something that now longtime listeners are probably sick of hearing me repeat, but 200, 300 cars in a market and the impact to Uber, 500 even, 1,000 even, is like not relevant with these expensive cars, or in Serve's case, these early robots. It's, when you flooded the market, when you get to scale with the cheaper cars, and then we'll see what the impact is. So I don't know, it'll definitely be interesting. If there's ever been motivation at Serve to stick it to their prior partner, regardless of what happened here, I'm sure that there's a lot of motivation there. So it'll be fun to watch this one play out, and I'm sure they'll be willing to to tell us about it as it goes. What do we have on the foreign autonomy desk, Grayson?
Walt, before we get to the foreign autonomy desk, I know you're hungry to get a sandwich there, or listen to some Wu-Tang Clan. Now that I got you inspired, there are a few things that we still have to cover. WeRide recently passed 100,000 Robotaxi rides, supervised for the record, on Uber. And most importantly, there's drone footage out of Arizona. There was a lot of Ojais spotted at that Maga Mesa plant. Do we have any numbers on that?
I think based on his aerial count, there was about 950 on the lot, 684 finished. So it's basically 1,000 cars ready to go. I'm not sure if every state can take them. I know you've pointed out that Florida, you don't expect to see these Ojais hitting the road. But again, this is another step. This is step 2 Ojai. I'm, as you know, most excited for the Hyundai step that really starts to get production going.
And there was reports from the United States Customs that 3,200 of these Zeekr vehicles have entered the United States. And if you put the publicly reported number just south of 4,000 plus another 3,200, that's 7,200 Waymo vehicles that potentially could go into service here in the United States. 7,200. That's real.
Yeah, and that gets to the that graph that I put in our report about the 10,000 Waymos that are going to be on the road in a year's time, and what that's going to compare to their peers. Now, my question is what are the tariffs on these things? Shouldn't there be 100% tariffs on these Zeekrs that are coming through LA?
There are 100% tariffs, and for clients, we have produced a whole bill of materials BOM chart there. But you are right about that, and if you want to see the BOM chart, reach out. Won't disclose it here, but yes, 100% tariffs are just the starting point for the cost of these.
So what's the next big milestone for Waymo to announce? 5,000, 6,000? What do you think their next big car number announcement will be?
5,000 has a nice ring to it. And I love to see that paired with a Hyundai announcement saying, okay, Hyundai is producing X number of vehicles every week. That would be something special to see.
Man, just again, a step on scale. I certainly would have liked if Waymo was pushing faster, but certainly the delay in Tesla locking down their technology has given, or has left the window further open for Waymo to try to continue to get towards scale with some low cost cars. So makes it that much more interesting for us to keep tabs on each week.
There's a lot for us to keep tabs on, and it just seems that, and I don't know why this is a trend, but it seems every Thursday the autonomy economy news drops. You get Uber news that drops, you get Waymo news that drops. Seems that Thursday's the big day, which brings us to the foreign autonomy desk. It's Thursday today. We're recording, and what happened? News came out. Uber, in a press release, and oh boy, there's a fine little detail buried down in one of the last paragraphs in that, which we'll talk about, is that they are getting ready to launch commercial robotaxi service in Japan, Tokyo, with Wave. No surprise, they're launching with a Japanese robotaxi company, because you have to, per Japanese law. That's not robotaxi, that's actual taxi. And buried down in the last paragraph, supervised. I mean, come on, just put it in the headline. Your partner Wave, who's running a phenomenal PR campaign now, is up front calling a supervised, but yet Uber's burying it down there.
Yeah, look, not I mean, every company does this. It's spin, it's whatever it is, but you know what our standards are. You know, the market's not commercial till it's 100 plus cars and driver out. So there you have it.
There we have it. And you want to know another little interesting tidbit that was buried? These vehicles, because of Nissan requirements, they'll be Nissan Leafs. Nissan is a partner. They'll be launching with LiDAR.
Well, that's certainly interesting. I'm not sure that that's going to be all of the product that's going to be offered there, because I thought Wave was doing stuff with Nissan that didn't have LiDARs from an ADAS perspective, but obviously different products. Didn't you guys also, over there at the Road to Autonomy and Omega and all the crazy stuff you're doing, come up with some other global expansion data points that I saw you posting on X?
Walt, that's right. I mean, Omega's been keeping us busy and following, I call it Waymo's grand European ambitions. And by the way, we wrote that post 2 weeks before somebody else used the exact same title, and we ran it through a copy editor, and it was pretty much near damn identical, but we were 2 weeks ahead. And for the record of those that like to copy, everything that we do at Road to Autonomy is cryptographically sealed, so we know who was first. Now that we had that PSA there for the record, we've been covering Waymo's grand European ambitions, and we call it a beachhead, because I'm going to run this through here for you really quickly. February, so we got United Kingdom, you've got the Netherlands, you've got Germany, you got France, you got Spain, and you got Switzerland. Remove the UK from this. This all happened in the matter of 6 weeks, Walt. And if you look at a map of Europe of how that's going, I'm like, okay, when does Belgium come online? All suddenly, we're playing a game of risk here. Waymo's got a European beachhead underway that the market, for the most part, is not talking about yet.
I mean, this fits into what I've talked about, adding markets, and then the scale comes later, the true scale in terms of cars per market. But Grayson, one other thing that you didn't include on the foreign autonomy desk, maybe you don't consider this foreign because it's off the globe. NASA's Perseverance is set to pass 28 autonomous miles. That breaks the record of opportunity. These are the rovers that are on Mars. And I guess my only question to you is, how long is it until Elon is going to send David Moss to Mars to break the autonomous record of NASA's Perseverance?
Soon as the SpaceX rocket can get there, because I think that would be awesome. It's interesting is that David Moss is on the verge of becoming a verb when it comes to testing stuff. And David, we love it for you. Go to Mars with Elon. I think that would be awesome. Set the record. And to the engineering team at NASA, thanks for always embracing autonomy. Thanks for the investments that you're doing, the wonderful work that the men and women at JPL do and NASA Ames. It's truly remarkable, the amount of research that you've published to move this forward. It is a wonderful job that the men and women of NASA are doing. So well done to the team at NASA. And Walt, thank you for covering earnings every week. And what do we need to look for next week?
A couple more earnings. Baidu and Pony AI are reporting. Aurora is doing like a town hall for retail investors. I don't expect much to come out of that. Then probably just them, hashing out all the recent accomplishments that they've had. So that's that. And congrats to AV Ride on the 100,000 miles that you put it out earlier. Looking forward to getting back in those cars next month.
Now that we're wrapping the show up, go blast 36 Chambers, one of the greatest albums of all time by the Wu-Tang Clan. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is scaling and adding cars in global markets. Walt, until next week.